Hi, I'm Boone. This is Boone's Slot Car Garage. And tonight, well, we're going to learn how to make an Esso Man. So, if we look down on the layout, we got an Esso guy. And, you see him at the old track of LeMans, and I just think that every slot car track needs an Esso guy. So, tonight, I'm going to show you guys how I made that Esso guy, all right? Bob's just gonna hang out. Don't think he's gonna say much, but let's do this. Okay, so we're inside and we start out on your computer. We gotta find a picture of the Esso Man. So if you look up on top, I went ahead and put Esso Man Billboard. And when you do that in a search engine and go into images, it's gonna bring up just tons and tons of different photos of Esso guys. So I'm going to use that guy right there. So go ahead and click on it. When you have it at this point, right click your mouse so it opens up the sub captions and go copy image. So now we have that image. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring it over into Microsoft Paint and we'll paste the image. Okay, so now I have the Microsoft Paint up and we have that image, so I want to go ahead and right click my mouse and paste that image up onto the screen. Now I'm just going to go ahead and click off to the side and that pretty much just locks it in. Okay, so now I'm going to come up over in the menu. I'm going to go ahead and hit print and 2D print. So I went ahead and loaded him in, and I'm doing a print preview of what we're gonna have. And if you take a piece of paper, like the paper that you can be printing on, it's gonna be printed out in the portrait form, which is straight up and down. Now landscape is gonna be sideways. So we want portrait, which is straight up and down. Now, by the proportions of what we have here, he's going to be roughly about 12 inches tall. And he'll be right around probably the area about 4 inches wide, which is perfect for the material that we're going to use for him. So I'm going to go ahead and print him out. A lot of times I will print maybe a couple of them out. Just, you never know, right? It's better to be safe than sorry. So we'll go ahead and print him out, and we come back, we'll see how he looks. So we're back out in the garage, and let's get our tools together that we're gonna need. So we're gonna need some super glue, some regular head PVA glue. I'm gonna use Mod Podge, acrylic paint, and what I'm using is oyster white. And this isn't a strong white, it's kind of like an antique white. So why I do that is it makes it look more weathered. So it's not like this bright, brilliant, brand new white, it just, it looks a little bit better. So we need some white acrylic, a ruler, pencil. I have two different styles of razor knives here, a retractable and a flip style. They're both like a razor blade or X-Acto blade knives. A pair of scissors, and I'm using a hacksaw, and this is a miniature hacksaw. You could also use a full size and just use the blade, and that's going to be for cutting our wood. And two different styles of paintbrushes. I have a larger and a smaller, and the larger I'm going to use with the Mod Podge to go ahead and glue our Esso guy onto the wood. So let's talk about our wood. We're going to use some Shiska Bob sticks. So they're just round sticks, and you can pick these up at a dollar store or whatever, very inexpensive. Going to use 1/4 inch balsa square stock. So I have two sticks of this. And we have our balsa plank wood, and this is 3/32 by 4 inch, and it's 36 inches long. So We just need one of those. So we come back. Oh, one last thing. We need our Esso guy. And I made a few different copies of them. And the reason why I do that is if you mess up on one, you have an extra, right? So it's always a safe thing. I mean, we're just talking about some paper. So I have a couple different copies of him. And when we come back, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and cut him out. Okay. So we have our Esso guy, and what you wanna do is you wanna cut them all out. So I just took my scissors and went ahead and cut around the black all the way around him. So once you got that all nice and trimmed out, next step is that we need to glue him to our piece of balsa wood. Alrighty, so we have our Esso Man, and he's all cut out, and I'm placing him onto our balsa plank. So what I have is him up against the edges here and over here on the side and fitting him on. Now, he's a little bit bigger, and I've done that for, I did that on purpose actually, because it's one thing if you can size him down so he fits on that plank, which is great, but if he doesn't, and you're like, darn, what do I do? Well, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna take care of that tonight. So what I have is him laid out on the plank, and he fits all the way down through here. Now I've went ahead and drew with a pencil right here on the edge, which we're gonna go ahead and cut that off so we don't have to worry about the rest of the plank. And up here on top, you'll see that he hangs off, right? Well, I have a piece of scrap, or you could use your existing plank and cut a piece off. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and fit that right here on the edge. Now, I've gone in with a pencil again and marked my upper part of it and the lower portion of it, so that when we take the Esso Man off of it, everything's marked and we know exactly what we need to do. So what I'm going to do is take him off of here and put him off to the side, and we have our plank. And now I'm going to take super glue, and I'm going to super glue this seam right here so that this all fits together. So when we come back, we'll go ahead and super glue him in, and then we'll refit the Esso Man and glue him to the board. Okay, so I have my super glue, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a bead of super glue right on this edge. So let's see here, get this up here and just go ahead and give it just a little dab all the way through. And the cool thing about balsa wood is that this stuff dries really fast with super glue. I mean, it gets a bond, and it really does nicely. So we just go ahead and line that all up and hold it there. And look at that, guys. I mean, I just put it on there, and bam, it's already taken form and shape right to it. So go ahead and get this massaged down a little bit. We'll let that dry. Then we come back, we'll go ahead and get our Esso Man glued to this, and we'll start trimming them out. So I went ahead and glued this on. Now, if there's a little bit of a seam where you can feel it, I have a little bit of 220 sandpaper, and just go ahead and sand that seam so it's nice and smooth. That way, when we do go ahead and glue the Esso guy down here, he doesn't have a crease running through him. Okay, so now it's all nice and in uniform through there. You're not going to see a crease. So once you have that and everything looks good, get a little bit of sawdust off of here. Next step is that we need to take this dude and we need to go ahead and glue him down on our board. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip him over. I'm going to get out my Mod Podge, or the PVA, and your bigger brush, and we're going to be, we don't want to put too much on it because we are dealing with paper. So, but you want a, you know, a good size, you know, you want to make sure that you got this all the way around. And I recommend running this off the edges so that you have a nice uniform coat on the whole entire backside of him. So you can tell I've been using this for grass and whatnot. I got a little bit of fiber in there, but it'll be okay for what we got going on here. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pull this glue all the way off to the sides. I'm gonna make sure that he is covered completely, okay? So we don't want any little pockets that do not have any glue on it. Boy, there is a lot of stuff in that glue, but I think we'll be okay. So we'll just keep on doing that. Pull this down. Get a nice even coat over everything. And at this point, let's see here, looks like there's a little bit up in there. If you look on the side, a lot of times you can tell by the sheen of the glue if you have coverage. And it looks like we got plenty of coverage. So we will now take our Esso guy. You remember how we had it so he was pretty much all the way on the edge, on that upper, and then on the side. So if we bring him right to those areas that we had him before, you can go ahead and get him all laid down. Now, when you're gluing him down, make sure you work from the inside. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and get him down. But if you notice, I'm working everything, I'm pushing off to the sides. And that's so that if we have an air bubble, we can go ahead and push it out. So let's go ahead and get that down through here. And it looks like I might need a little bit more glue. Nope, it's working. Well, this side isn't though. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull that up. And go ahead and get some glue. And we'll just pull that down into there. Okay. And there we go. So what we want to do now is go ahead and again kind of work it all out. If you have any air bubbles, go ahead and push them out, and then we'll go ahead and set him off to the side and let him dry. You don't want to start rushing this step with it because he can still move on that board. So we want to make sure that the glue is all dry before we take it to the next step of actually trimming him off. So we come back, the glue will be dry, and we'll start trimming this extra bit of wood around the silhouette. So we got to this point and we have it all glued, had the Esso guy glued down onto it. And now what we want to do is take your razor knife and go right around the edges here, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut this down and just follow the outer silhouette. So this might take a few passes to get it all through. And when it comes down to some of this intricate stuff, like right down in here in the edges, don't worry about that right now. And what you can do is just come through and we'll slice this off. I'll get this portion of it off of there. Okay. And we can come back to that and pick it up. But first off, let's go ahead and we'll trim this all the way out. So I'm going to continue trimming this all the way out. When we come back, we'll go ahead and take care of these little areas that we don't get on the first pass. Okay, so I went ahead and I got them all pretty much roughed in. I'm able to get pretty close to all the edges here. But there is some areas like right down in here in this little pocket. So instead of trying to do it on your initial cut, just go ahead and get it all trimmed out as comfortable as you feel, and then just come back. And what we can do about this is just come back and just trim it up just a little bit at a time. And we can just pick that off. right there. And then voila, you got that. So just kind of go through, pick up some of those loose areas. When we come back, we'll go ahead and we'll take a little bit of 220 sandpaper and we're going to hit the edges of it. So now we've got all the edges and all those done. Now if you look right here, you see a little bit of an edge that's hanging up. And if we look over here by his fingers, we can see those areas right through there. So to fix that, instead of trying to trim it out with your knife, if you take a little bit of 220 sandpaper, and now when you're sanding this, you don't want to sand this way because you're going to hit the paper. So you don't want to sand here, you want to tilt, tilt your paper back and grab it up here on the edge and just shape it just a little bit. Okay, so shape it, and what we're going to do is we're just going to round that off a little bit. Just kind of smooth it out. Just like that. So now we have a nice edge to it. Looks like it needs a little bit more. And this is just the fine-tuning little portions of it. So we'll go ahead and take care of that. If we look at that, looks pretty good. A little bit more. You gotta remember it's balsa wood, so it sands really fast. That's why we are using 220. Because if you used a more aggressive sandpaper, it would just rip right through it. So up on his fingers here, just kind of chisel it down a little bit. And see, get that. So then we just work our way around him and just work those edges. So just kind of keep on going down around and just get it to where you're happy with it. So we come back, we've got him all on his board here. We'll start building the structure. Okay, so I got my lines scrabbed onto the back of our Esso guy, and went ahead and split the difference and got kind of an evenness as far as our structure on the back. Next step is to go ahead and take your balsa 1/4 inch doweling, and what we need to do is find out exactly how long we need to make this structure. Now on the one that was at LeMans, they went ahead and it hung out a little bit on the sides, and then they had the structure all built off of that. So if we look at this guy, we can see how he's oblonged out. He has one side that's much further out than the other. So what we're going to need to do is kind of figure out where our edges are. And my table here, I have a little bit of a grid set out. So if I line him up, and we're pretty much looking from this guy right here to that line right here, okay? So we want our doweling to hang just a little bit on both sides. So if we take our ruler and we figure that's roughly 5 inches, each one of these spaces is 1 inch, I can go ahead and run this out about 1/4 inch on both sides, which puts me at 5.5 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take my doweling here and I'm going to cut each one of these at 5.5 inches and bring that down through. So when we come back, we'll have this all cut up. Okay, so I have it laid down, and go ahead and mark it right here at 5.5 inches. And what I like to do, especially with the doweling, is to go ahead and scrab a little bit of a crease into it like that, so it's a little bit of a guide. And then I take my hacksaw blade and go ahead and just draw it back onto it. And the reason why I'm not cutting this with the knife is because with these doweling, if you cut it with a knife and it's not the sharpest, and the other thing, this is fairly thick, it will have a tendency of distorting your cut and kind of squashing it down. and we don't want our ends to be all squashed down. We want them to be nice and crisp. So that's why I come back with the hacksaw blade and just draw it across and get a nice, clean, crisp cut. So we get it down to that point, and we'll just go ahead and pull it off, and there we go, nice clean cut. So I'll keep on doing this, and we come back, we'll start gluing it on the back side of our guy. Okay, so I went ahead and I got all my pieces cut. Now what I need to do is just dress up the edges because they might be a little bit frayed. So I have a little piece of 220 sandpaper, and all I'm gonna do is just dress this up lightly. And that's just so, you know, it looks better and it doesn't have a bunch of, you know, edges, frayed edges and whatnot. So I'm gonna go ahead and just dress these up real quick, and we'll start gluing it down. Okay, so I'm getting ready to go ahead and glue those on the back, but I need to point out something about the little Esso guy. If you notice, he doesn't stand on both feet. If he stands on both feet, you'll notice how he's tilted to one side, and he stands on his left foot. You can see how the right one is up in the air just a little bit. So when you're getting ready to do all your lines and everything else in the back, you want to make sure that his left foot is the one that you're using to base your lines and everything off the bat, because when it's around this way, it's kind of hard to tell which way he is actually standing. So just a little hint that put him down and have him on his left foot, so the right one's in the air, and he will be straight up and down. So I'll bring it down here. I'll line it up to the edge of my table so he's straight. We'll make sure we have our grid all set there. And now we're ready to start adding our cross beams. Now at this point, if you want to take some tape or whatnot to lay it down on here so it would hold it in place and it doesn't shift while you're doing this, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and hold him and take a little bit of our super glue, give it a good shake, and take our beam, and first off we'll set it down here so we know exactly how we're going to do it. Now remember, we were running it off about 1/4 inch on the one side. Okay, so if we use our lines here, we can see where we're centered out at, and you could come in and actually mark this at 1/4 inch if you wanted to on both sides. So that's the area that I'm going to do it. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea to mark this a little bit just because. Okay, and rotate it over, put a couple little dabs of super glue on this guy like so. Bring it back over, and then we will go ahead and line it up to our marks. Okay, and there we go. And we'll take a look over here. It looks like I'm a little bit of a tilt, so I'm actually going to have to redo this. So I'm going to pull this out, set this back down, and once you get this first one down, everything else falls into place. It's always that first one, you know. So we'll get this down through here. I'll lightly put it there, bring it back over, line this up, and there we go. Okay, so first one is in place. Now what we need to do is just go ahead and make sure we measure off of him on both sides when we put the second one down, and we'll just follow that grid all the way down. Okay, so I have my 5 cross beams in place, went ahead and glued them out, and if we look on the other side, we can see how that looks, and it's pretty much squared on both sides going down. Now we'll bring it back over. And I went ahead and measured out and found the center of my beam. And I went ahead and duplicated that down at the bottom and also on the sides. Now the sides, I went ahead and brought it in 1 inch on both sides. That way, when our beams go down, it's much easier for us to go ahead and line those all up. So the beams that I cut down on this are right around 9.5 inches. So 9.5 inches. And I went ahead and sliced them and dressed them on both sides. Now what we need to do is go ahead and bring these down and glue them into place. Now we want to have it so it's your bottom of your feet are here. You don't want your beam up above the feet. So we want to bring this down so that it's hanging down below his feet. So when you do mount it onto your layout, he's not like, you know, his feet aren't buried into the ground. So what I figured as far as on the top and on the bottom, as far as what I'm running wild off the end, is 1/2 inch. And 1/2 inch puts me down just below his feet and just over here on the top. And if we look at this, just kind of give you an idea, when we bring this back over, it looks pretty good. So, and if you saw pictures of the original in LeMans, you can see the structure on the back side of him. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and take my super glue and glue this into place. Now, if you're using balsa, and a lot of times they'll put a barcode right onto the wood. So if you're running into that, make sure at this point you go ahead and you sand that off. And I just use a little bit of 220 and just sand that off, because it might have a tendency to bleed through when we go and paint it. So if we just go ahead and scuff it off just lightly, it's all fixed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and glue these into place. When we come back, we'll start the other step. Okay, so now we have our uprights glued into place, and we have them all evenly spaced. And if we turn it around, we're kind of getting a little bit of more idea of how she's going to look. So bring it back. Next thing we need to do is create our more structure as far as the vertical supports. So what I have done is that I went ahead and cut out 3 pieces of the 1/4 inch, and what I go off of is the second one down I use for the center. So it's from that second cross support to the end, and then the 2 on the sides, I go 3 down, and the same thing, cut it off to that point. Now we're not going to lay it right up on top, so we need to go ahead and cut little studs that we're going to glue onto these sections. So then we have this guy elevated up off like so. All right, so I went with 1 inch, and 1/4 and 1/4 brings it to 1/2 inch. So our structure is going to sit 1.5 inches off of, you know, off of the back, and kind of get an idea. If I can hold this and go sideways to it, you know, it looks good the way it's spaced out. So our next step, after you have these verticals cut and your blocks cut as far as the spacing, is that we'll go ahead and glue those into place. So we come back, we'll start gluing those down. So I went ahead and I've glued these 2 into place, and we're going to go ahead and do this one. So what I'm doing is just putting a dab of super glue on the end here and one right here. And you notice I'm lining up with my cross supports. So then go ahead and take your small guy, line it up, and get it right in there. And the cool thing about super glue and balsa wood is it sticks real fast, so you don't have to sit there and hold it for a long time. So go ahead and get that looking halfway decent there, and bring this guy over here. Get that guy placed. So then we got our two uprights, and then we'll go ahead and glue this guy in. So we'll just put a dap right here, dap right there, and just line this guy to the top of that support to right there. Give a little bit of pressure, and there we go. So there's the beginning of the supports in the back. And at this point, what we're going to do now is start putting in our cross pieces so it looks more like the real thing. So when we come back, we'll start putting in our cross support. Okay, so you can see that I started putting in some of this structure, and that is with the shish kebab sticks. So you can kind of see how they look when they go in. So let's go ahead and put a couple in. So what I do is I just go ahead and line it up with where I want to put it, right? And then I use some wire snips. So let's see. Bring this guy in. Bring him right up there on the top to this point right here. And now what I'll do is line this up and go ahead and snip him off. And the nice thing about the snips is it'll actually make it at a little bit of an angle because it squeezes the wood. At this point, go ahead and put some super glue on either side. And put it into place. Let's go ahead and hold it for a little bit. And there we go. We have an upright. So I just keep on following this procedure all the way through and put the structure in. So I'm putting side structure and some angles. And over here on this, I'll go ahead and put a straight one right in here. So let's do that one. So I'll line that up. Take my wire snip, bring it right up inside, snip it, and we want to test fit it. So we'll go ahead and put this in, make sure it's going to test fit. Looks like it's a little bit on the long side, so we'll just go ahead and take a hair off of it, right like that. Put it back down in here, and there we go. Put a little bit of super glue onto this guy. Then we'll set him in, line him up on top, and just set it in there, if he will stay. Oh, it's stuck to my finger. Okay, there we go. And we have an upright. So you got to square it up just a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to follow the same procedure and go ahead and put an angled one in. And just go ahead and fill it all in on the back side, and you have all your structure in. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this off, and when we come back, it'll be ready for paint. All right, so now we're ready to go ahead and start painting our structure. And I'm using this acrylic, and it's called Oyster White, or you could use like an antique white. And the reason why I'm doing that is so that it's not a bright, brilliant white. It looks a little bit more weathered, and it just kind of gives a little bit more of a realistic look. Now, I have found that if I start with the inside and work my way out, it works the best. And so I start with the back side of the board and start working my, different angles and stuff from that point. Once I get this backboard painted, I'll then go to the edge. And so I went ahead and I got the backboard painted, and now I'm going to come to the edge. And on the edge, I will just go ahead and drag it off. Kind of load up the brush and then drag it off. And if you get a little bit on the outside, it's okay. You can just go ahead and take your finger and wipe down, and it'll just come right off. It might go ahead and lighten it a little bit, but in a sense, that kind of gives it a little bit more of a realistic look anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and I'm going to finish up painting all this, and we come back, we'll wrap it all up. Alrighty, so we got it all painted and looks good. So you can see how the roundness, it fits real nice. And the thing is, it's it's a lot easier to use the round shish kebab sticks to do your structure than it is actual squares, because when it comes down into the joints, if you're using square stock, you would have to do angle cuts and stuff to get it all set in. And with the round stock, I mean, it's easier. It's not as frustrating, and your end result looks pretty good. So what we'll do with this guy is let's set it down here, and you can see the relation to the other stuff on our layout. And there we are. So looks pretty good. So you can see what he looks like on the layout, and it completes. I always think that the Esso guy is a really cool addition to any layout. So I've got an extra Esso guy. Don't know what I'm going to do with him yet, but I'll keep you posted. But tell you what, it's pretty cool. So if you like this video, like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. And I have to thank you guys because I was able to get monetized. So we're actually getting somewhere with Boone Slot Car Garage. So till next time, I'll see you guys later.